A couple of years ago, I was broke, I was out of shape, and I was completely lost. I felt like a total failure until I discovered 5 simple mindset shifts that changed my life practically overnight. Now, were they truly instant? Maybe not. But once I embraced these ideas, my outlook changed so quickly that it felt like a switch had been flipped. Now I've gone on to earn a master's degree in mechanical engineering with straight A's. I'm working full-time as an engineer with multiple high-paying job offers, and I've even launched several businesses on the side. Most importantly, I've never been happier or healthier than ever before. And today I want to show you exactly how I made that switch. So if you're someone who's been searching for that key to finally break out of your rut, whether it's in your career, your relationship, or even your personal goals, make sure that you stick around, because these 5 mental shifts just might be that nudge that you've been waiting for. And I want to begin by asking you this simple question. Have you ever felt like you're on a treadmill, you're moving, but you're not really getting anywhere? See, I lived like that for several years. I'd wake up each morning with that surge of optimism that today is the day that I finally break through, only to crash into bed at night right back where I started. It was like life was on repeat. New day, but then same routine and no real progress. Well, here is the twist. All that time, I thought that I needed a perfect plan or a magic shortcut. But it turns out that I was just holding myself back with something so simple that it was almost embarrassing. My own thoughts. The stories that I told myself, the tiny whispers of doubt or the excuses disguised as reasons. See, once I recognized those and I flipped them, everything else began to click. Which brings us to mindset shift number 1. I'm 100% responsible for my own choices. See, I used to blame my lack of progress on everything around me, whether it was my job, my schedule, or even the weather. I'd give excuses to myself like, I'd work out if it wasn't raining. I would eat healthier if I wasn't always so busy. I would read more if my commute weren't so long. But then here's the truth, right? And it's a very harsh truth. If you don't own your decisions, then someone else, or at least something else, will. And I remember one Monday morning, right? I was running late for work. I was feeling very stressed and annoyed. And instead of reflecting on the fact that I had stayed up too late the night before and I had snoozed my alarm like 3 times, I ended up blaming the traffic and I cursed the city's road system. But then the real problem was me, right? I hadn't taken responsibility for my own routine, whether it was my bedtime, my alarm, my morning prep. And then because of that, my day spiraled, right? It was fueled by a mindset that I was somehow a victim of my circumstances. But then the second that I decided to own my daily actions, my morning routine, my evenings, my spending, it was like I had unlocked a hidden superpower. Sure, right? There will always be things that we cannot control. Random mishaps, unexpected emergencies, even the weather, right? But then our reaction to those obstacles, that's always within our power. And once I made this mental shift, my motivation went through the roof. Instead of thinking, why is this happening to me, right? I started asking myself, how can I respond in a way that moves me forward, right? I stopped waiting for the stars to align or for that perfect condition. I just did what needed to be done. You know what I mean? The weather didn't matter, right? My schedule didn't matter, right? I realized that I alone choose how I show up. And this perspective isn't a one-time fix, by the way, right? It's something that I practice every single day. When I catch myself saying, I cannot do this because of so-and-so, I pause and I reframe it. I tell myself, I choose not to do this because of so-and-so. And this simple switch changes everything. It puts the power back into my own hands, right? To make a different choice the next time. And that is where I believe true progress begins. Which brings us to mindset shift number 2. Progress will always beat perfection, right? I used to say this to myself all the time. I will start when the time is exactly right, when I'm 100% ready. But then here's the thing. The quest for perfection can actually mask a deeper fear within yourself. Whether it's a fear of criticism, fear of failure, fear of not being good enough. Because perfection isn't always a testament to high standards. It's often just a fancy way of procrastinating, right? And I learned this the hard way. I would spend so many months obsessing over the smallest details. Fonts on my website, the exact shade of a logo, right? The proper thumbnail of my YouTube video. I was convinced that, I was being thorough. But then all I was doing was I was actually just stalling, right? I was so terrified of releasing something imperfect that I ended up not releasing anything at all. And then that is where it clicked me. You cannot improve on something that doesn't exist, right? You can't improve on that. So I adopted a new mantra that done is better than perfect. That messy first draft, I published it. That 5K race, I signed up even though I could barely run a mile without gasping for air, right? And yes, it was uncomfortable, right? I tripped a few times, I got some critical feedback, and I felt exposed putting imperfect work and content out there. But it was exactly those experiences that taught me what I needed to improve. Right? Suddenly, my lack of progress skyrocketed because every failure or rough draft became an opportunity to learn and to grow. It wasn't a reflection of my self-worth, right? Planning and preparation are great, but then they have a limit. Eventually, you need action. You need execution, right? When you finally take that step, even if it's wobbly, right? You're moving forward, right? So instead of asking, is this perfect? Ask yourself, is this good enough to move on to the next step? Embrace the awkward first attempt, right? Give yourself permission to stumble, to be messy, to learn in real time, because an imperfect step, I truly believe that, right, is actually infinitely more valuable than a perfect plan that is, postponed indefinitely. Which brings us to mindset shift number 3. Failure is data, not disaster. See, when I first started chasing big goals, the idea of failure absolutely paralyzed me, right? I think to myself, what if I launch this project and nobody likes it? What if I publish this video and nobody watches it, right? What if I pour my heart out into this project and it crashes and it burns? My own fear of failing loomed so large, right, that it often stopped me from trying something in the first place. Until one day it clicked me. Every single failure is actually just a piece of feedback, right? It's telling you something. Maybe you need to prepare more. Maybe your timing was off, right? Maybe you just need a different strategy, for example. That's all it is. It doesn't say anything permanent about who you are and what you're capable of. And I started to see each setback as an experiment's result, like a scientist collecting data. If I tried a new workout, right, and I couldn't stick to it, then instead of labeling myself lazy or incapable, I'd ask, okay, what went wrong? Was it the wrong time of the day? Was it too advanced? Maybe I needed an accountability buddy, Maybe I needed a gym partner. I tweak one variable and I try it again. And that mindset took the sting out of failing from me, because it meant that no attempt was ever really just a waste, right? It was just another data point. Data, not disaster. And once I separated myself and my identity from my results, I stopped seeing every mistake as a personal shortcoming. Instead, I was a step closer to getting things right? And that is a game changer, because when you view failure as data, you realize that you can always pivot, you can always iterate, right? You can always refine. You're never stuck in one place. You're always constantly learning. And the more you learn, the faster you level up. Learn from your mistakes. Let your missteps inform you and not define you. And then watch how quickly you will grow in your life. And this brings us to mindset shift number 4. When you have to make a choice between scarcity versus abundance, always choose abundance. See, I used to be the guy who would hoard my feelings, my time, my energy, my ideas. I was convinced that if I shared too much with others, then there wouldn't be anything left for me. And that is a classic scarcity mindset, right? The belief that everything is limited and that if someone else wins, then it automatically means that you lose. I learned the hard way that all this does is fence you in. You worry more about defending what you have than growing into what you could have. And then one day I noticed how people who openly collaborated with others, who openly shared resources with others, they always seemed to have more opportunities knock on their door, right? And this was a wake-up call for me. Clearly, being generous, whether with knowledge, with connections, or just simply encouragement, right? Clearly, this meant that these things didn't really deplete them. In fact, they were thriving because they were planting seeds everywhere else. And that is when I decided to embrace the abundance mindset. And picture it like an infinite pie in front of you. If you see success, love, and resources as unlimited, right? You realize that someone else's achievement doesn't really diminish your own potential. Instead of feeling threatened by others' wins, you can actually feel inspired and energized, right? Going, look, it is possible. And because of that, you start collaborating, you start sharing tips, you start cheering each other on. And that good energy boomerangs back in ways that you'd never expect, right? New partnerships, new creative sparks, or even simply a broader network of amazing people in your corner. And by the way, shifting from scarcity to abundance doesn't really mean that you ignore competition or that you pretend that challenges don't really exist. It just means that you stop seeing life as a fight for limited scraps, like hyenas, right? Instead, you start focusing on growth, on creating possibilities, on expanding the pie in front of you, instead of guarding like one little slice of it, right? And once you view the world this way, it's incredible how many doors and how many opportunities begin to open up for you in life. Which brings us to mindset shift number 5. You deserve success, and so does everyone else around you. See, I used to secretly believe that success was reserved for other people. You know, those ultra confident types of people who seemed to be born with more talents, more money, more connections. And deep down, because of that, I told myself that, I'm not the kind of person who can achieve that level of success. And that quiet belief within myself, within my heart, it actually just made me shrink from opportunities. It sabotaged my own progress, right? It made me accept less than what I was actually capable of. And then one day, I realized and I caught a glimpse of how much this belief was actually holding me back. See, if you think that you don't deserve success, then you will always play small. You'll quit at the first hurdle, thinking, it wasn't really meant for me anyway. But then the truth of the matter is that you can actually achieve great things, only if you recognize your worth though, right? And the moment that I embraced that idea, that I actually did deserve success, that changed everything. I stopped seeing obstacles as validation of my inadequacy, right? And instead of that, I started seeing them as challenges that I could tackle or that I could learn from. And what's even more than that is that I realized that everyone else deserves success just as much as I do, right? This doesn't just mean clapping politely when your friend does well. It means genuinely believing that someone else's success doesn't really hinder or diminish yours, right? We can all rise together. And once I fully understood this, jealousy, self-doubt, all of these traits gave way to collaboration and confidence. I became more open to sharing resources, to celebrating others. And that collective mindset, it led me to have stronger relationships, to have better opportunities, and even a deeper sense of fulfillment within myself. So make sure to recognize your own worth, champion others around you, and then you'll see and watch how quickly your world expands in your life. Now look, these aren't just quick hacks or empty affirmations, right? They're perspectives that you can weave into the fabric of your daily life. Adopting each mindset might feel very awkward at first, right? But then that discomfort is actually a sign that you're stepping beyond your comfort zone into better possibilities. And trust me, the magic happens the moment that you commit to living by these principles, right? Even if you start small. With that being said, this is the end of this video. Drop a comment below and share your experience. What is your biggest takeaway? And if you're ready for more practical tips and content on self-improvements, productivity, and designing a life that you actually love, then don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.